Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Contributions Submissions Made Simple. I'm Denny Lawrence, the marketing specialist here at Davyn, and I am excited to be your host today. Today, we'll be showcasing our Davyn Social Security Platform, a user-friendly tool that gives organizations like yours a 360 view of each citizen. Our platform makes it easy to submit employee contributions, automated reminders, statements, and more via portals, and we're excited to show you how. During this session, we'll explore common issues and pain points that our solution addresses and how you can use this platform to streamline and automate your business processes. So at any time during this event, you can use a dedicated chat to ask your questions and we'll be answering them throughout the session. Note that today's session is also being recorded and we'll be sure to send to all attendees in the upcoming days. So buckle up, tune in, and let's jump straight into it. But before we kick things off with our presentation, here's a brief overview of our presenters. Firstly, we have Derek Villeneuve, our Chairman and Director of Strategy. We also have Richard Ince, one of our Senior Business Analysts. And we have Justin Gittins, our Power Platform Practice Lead. And of course, myself, Danielle Lawrence, the Marketing Specialist. So now that we're all familiar with the team, I'll hand over the floor to Derek to kick off the presentation. So whenever you're ready, Derek.
All right, thank you, Danielle. We're going to start just by covering our agenda. I'm going to have a short introduction to Davyn and our solution offerings, just so you know who we are and what we do. From there, we'll quickly get into our Davyn Social Security platform, and I'll provide you an overview of what that functionality includes. And the focus really for this webinar today is, contributions made simple. So we're going to focus on the benefits of our employer portal, and Justin is going to take us through, Justin and Richard are going to take us through a demo of the portal and how it works. And then we're going to wrap up with questions and answers. So with that, let's get right into Davyn and our solution offerings. So Davyn is a Microsoft partner. We're based in the Caribbean, and we do work throughout the region. We are actually the leading Microsoft partner for business applications in the territory. Our focus is mainly around, and it has been since the inception of our business, around business applications. So today, what we use to deliver that is primarily Microsoft Power Platform, Dynamics 365 Business Central, and other Dynamics 365 solutions. We also partner closely with LS Retail, so we do a lot of retail work in the region as well. So this is ERP related. It includes things like finance, supply chain. We do HR payroll, customer relationship management, manufacturing, field service, project management, essentially applications that you use to operate your business. And we can do this, in a very focused area, or it can be across the board. We implement full service ERP solutions. After that, we, as a Microsoft partner, heavily invest in the cloud computing platform, Azure in particular. If you want to shift some of your resources that are on premise into the cloud and allow your team to focus on higher value areas, we can do that. We can also deploy applications into the cloud, either whether they're new or legacy applications that you're looking to move there. After that, we get into data analytics. So Microsoft Power BI, Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure Data Factory. So we can take data, consolidate it into a warehouse, and provide very powerful reporting and analysis around that data. On the productivity and collaboration area, this is predominantly Microsoft 365, which includes, all those apps we're very familiar with, Word, Excel, those things, Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, all sorts of collaboration tools, Teams, which we're using currently, but also some of the other products like Project or Azure DevOps for tracking your development process are also part of this suite. And finally, security and compliance, which is very important in the world of IT today. So Microsoft Defender, Azure Active Directory, we can integrate that and provide redundancy with online versions of it that are integrated to your on-prem Active Directory. And also site recovery. So whether you're backing up your stuff into the cloud or providing actual redundant failover solutions in the cloud in case your on-premise solution goes down. So that's us in a nutshell. And with that, what I'm going to do is move specifically over to Davyn Social Security Platform. So we refer to it internally as DSSP. But the idea here is we wanted to create a platform that meets a certain goals that are important to Social Security. So one is providing a 360-degree view of an insured person or an employer. So I want to be able, I want a user to be able to go into the system, go to an IP and see everything about that IP, or look at an employer and see everything related to the employer. We wanted a fully integrated system where everything works together. It's one platform that all communicates seamlessly together. When we started this, with the advent of COVID, it did introduce some other priorities. So one of them was this, right? Reducing branch wait times and in-person contact. Making a solution that's accessible, and accessible meaning internally, so our users could access it, easily, but also use it while they're on the road through mobile apps on a phone or a tablet, but also making it accessible to the public, right? So we want our insured people, we want employers, maybe healthcare providers, doctors, all being able to easily access the system. We wanted something that was easy to report on, that we could do deep analysis on. Performance management, tracking process times, being able to drill into, how long certain things are taking us, so that we can optimize the solution, improve our processes to reduce the time it takes to service our customers. Of course, the platform has to be secure. We want to know that only the authorized personnel can access the data, and it had to include a full auditing suite. So we know, what data is being changed, who's changing it, when it was changed, all of that stuff. Fraud reduction was also an imperative of Social Security, and we accomplished that through implementation of biometrics in some cases, but also just through insight into the application through analytics or possibly AI to detect fraud. And finally, we wanted an application that was easy for staff to use, that we could engage with them easily. And this is important. So what we did was we built a platform on top of Microsoft's Power Platform, right? This is an open set of applications that can be used to create very tailored solutions to an organization. It's enterprise grade. It's highly scalable from few users to thousands of users. And the data set can scale into the terabytes of data. So Microsoft Power Platform is built on these core components, which you may be familiar with already: Power BI, Power Apps for creating applications, Power Automate, which is a business process automation, so creating workflows where you want to send automatic notifications to people, for example, or automatically update data when certain conditions exist. Power Virtual Agents if you want to communicate with other stakeholders through AI. Power Pages, which is what the new branding for the portal. So this is where we want to make external facing websites available to our stakeholders to interact with us. And finally, it needs to be easy to connect to. So there's hundreds of data connectors that connect into the Dataverse, which is the database that sits behind all of this. And there's an AI builder in there as well. So if we want to take advantage of AI capabilities in the solution, that's certainly possible. So this slide here talks about our Social Security platform in terms of the modules. So you can see at the top there where we got Power Apps, we got Office 365 for collaboration, we got Fulcrum Biometrics, which is now a Fujitsu company, and our portal. Right. So there's a set of modules that comprise our Davyn Social Security platform that cover all areas, right? Which we already talked a little bit about security. It's role based. It can be segregated by business units. We can lock down parts of the application where if you have some people in one branch and you don't want them to see data in another branch, things like that can be done. Full auditing suite. For branch management, we facilitate this through taking appointments. So an IP, for example, could make an appointment on a portal, and then they would come into a branch. We have an electronic kiosk that you can go get a number from. And by doing that electronically, at the point where we print out that ticket, we know at what point they started their journey in the branch. And then that ticket gets given to CSR, and then we can track what transactions are being done in the branch from the ticket. There's actually a barcode on it. So that gives us data around how long people spent in the branch, what they did while they were there, and that allows us to improve our operations, right, on the basis of that data. We also have an integration from a point of sale perspective for cash receipting. So people can walk into the branch, make payments, whether they be employers, which is the primary payments that we take, but also in some cases an IP could walk in and maybe need a new card. So we would charge a fee for that. Or in some security boards or national insurance boards take payments for other things like rent or loan payments from employees and things like that. So one centralized payment, which is point of sale based, that feeds into the rest of the system. For insured persons, we need to register them. We need to issue cards to them. We would integrate to a card printing solution if that exists. We want to track all the changes that we do to an insured person's record. And in our system, we track every change that's made to the IP. So you can see that if you go into the IP, you would see all of the changes that they made to their record since the system was being used, and whether that change was made internally or through the portal. We also want to track all of the activities that we have with our stakeholders. So whether it be IP, employer, medical practitioners, what have you, we want to track, communications with them through email, through telephone calls, meetings, all of these things. So we have an integration to Outlook for that purpose as well. Same thing with employers, but with employers, we're taking transactions from employers in the form of schedules or statements, and we need to track payments against those, which gets us into our dunning module, where we can send out automatic notifications to employers on an escalating set of a set of notifications that escalate. So after 30 days, maybe you send if they don't submit, you might send one warning, another after 30 days, and then maybe a final notice pending legal action in 60 days, for example. So that's how the dunning works. There's a compliance module for our inspectors to be able to follow up with employers, to tip them off of when non-compliance is occurring. They can track their investigations there. If there's assessments that have to be done with the employer, that's done in the compliance module as well. From a benefits perspective, we take claims, we calculate the value of the payouts for those claims, and then there's a compliance aspect to this, and then we manage all of those outgoing payments on a schedule, and different claims can be paid on different schedules. From a document management perspective, obviously, when registering employers or IPs, or when we're taking benefit claims, it's often a requirement that documents are submitted as part of that. And we track all of those documents in Microsoft SharePoint, and we link the documents to the records in the solution. So you can go to an insured person's record and see all the documents readily in the system that they would have submitted. I mentioned the integration to Outlook for collaboration. So you can be in Outlook, create an email, link it to an IP, link it to an employer, link it to a benefit claim easily, and that email would go onto the timeline and be visible within the application. I mentioned biometrics. So we use Fulcrum to register typically insured people. We use this for our insured person to register them and then identify them later. So for example, you could, if you were using biometrics, enable a pensioner to come in, use a kiosk, and do their life declaration using biometrics, whether that be fingerprints or retina scan, for example. Those are common ways that you can do this. And finally, our portal. So that's the focus of today's presentation. We have a portal for insured persons where they can go see contributions, make benefit claims, things like that. We have an employer portal, which is predominantly used for employers to submit their statements and pay them. There's an upcoming doctor's portal, which would kick off a benefit claim, right? Because the beginning of most benefit claims is a doctor's certificate. So the intent is to allow doctors to actually submit that certificate online instead of doing it through a paper form. And then eventually healthcare providers as well. So when we're dealing with, for example, a workplace injury, there are, in some cases we've seen Social Security boards, they have to work with healthcare providers for delivering the benefit around the healthcare that's required in that case of injury. We use Power BI to report on all of this data. And then again, we can leverage Microsoft AI if, where it makes sense to do that. And one of the things that we're looking at is how we can use AI to look at claims or, in particular detection of fraud, things like that. And we use Microsoft Social Security, Microsoft as SQL integration services to do integrations to other applications. We also use it to migrate data. So it's common when we're moving off of an existing Social Security platform, we have to take all of that data, the IP master data, the employer master data, and all of the history of claims and things like that and contributions, and bring that into our system. So we use Microsoft SSIS to do that. So today we're specifically going to look at the employer portal. That's the demo we have planned for you. And there are some key, some key benefits or things that we were looking to accomplish with the portal. So one was automation, right? We want to reduce the amount of times that we're spending internally keying in, obviously, these statements if they're being provided manually. By making that portal available to the employers and making it easy for them, what we do is we reduce a lot of the internal processes around having to get these statements into the system. And we want it to be automated in the sense that we calculate what the contributions are. So it's not the employer doing calculations. The system does that for them. It will calculate any interest or penalties. So that's the first thing. The second is elimination of entry errors. So if the employer's entering the statement, then they can see what you'll see that in the demo, but they can see what the contributions get calculated to. They're not writing it on a physical form that's then re-entered by somebody else later. And the portal also accounts for the different types of employers. So if you may have a standard employer, you may be self-employed, you may be a voluntary contributor. So there's different ways of submitting those statements. It considers things like the age of the IP in determining what the contributions should be. It looks at the schedules. So, we have seen instances where Social Security boards have adjusted their rates. So, it would look at the rates that are applicable at the time of for the period being submitted. It would also have to consider things like if there was an amnesty issued where there's no interest or we're waiving interest. And also we need to make sure that when they're entering a statement for an IP that we're validating who that person is and their Social Security number. And the last thing that was very important to us is we wanted to do it from an interface that was easy to use to make it as easy as possible for employers to get their statements into the system. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Justin and Richard, and what they're going to do is walk us through a demo of the employer portal.
Thank you very much, Derek. Good morning, all. My name is Justin. Please confirm that you're seeing my screen.
Yep.
Great. All right, so happy to be demonstrating this portal to you today. We have a fantastic team over at Davyn, building this portal continuously and supporting it in its use in production. It's running in production environments for about 2 customers right now. We're happy about that. So what you see here is the starting page. It's the My Social Security Self-Service Portal. And of course, everything here we can customize to your needs. For example, this is right now Davyn themed, but you can imagine your customer's logo up here. The information that we share about it, it's easy, convenient, and secure. And we'll be demonstrating some of those things for you this morning. One portal account. So you create an account and you have access to everything that you need. And we have some frequently asked questions at the bottom here that we could customize for your organization. So let's get started by jumping into the portal. So I'll click here on login, and this will take us to the login screen. If you do not have an account, you will click sign up now. We use Azure B2C in the backend here for our directory services. So we enable you to enter your email address. This is the first thing that you would do to create an account. This needs to be verified. We will send the code to your email. You go there, grab that code, bring it back to this portal and submit it, along with entering your password and your name. You create your account. It's that simple. I already have an account prepared for this demonstration, so I won't be doing that. I will go back and log in with the account already set up. So I'm logging in here with Mario. Mario is associated with 2 employers at the moment. We have this access as feature at the very top left here that allows you to switch the mode of the portal based on the business that you're performing steps on behalf of. You could imagine scenarios where Mario is perhaps a business owner. He owns multiple businesses, and so he has to submit legally statements on behalf of those businesses for the people he employs. Or it could be that Mario is contracted out by different businesses, and so we allow the opportunity for you to link as an existing employer, or you could register with the organization, SSPs or the national insurance boards, uh, using a separate form. Right, so that's a bit about this first page that you see here. We will list all of the employers you have access to. Nice. Next, I want to take you to the dashboard. And this dashboard, we have two different areas here. The profile dashboard, which just gives a summary of the employer you're accessing as. You see the employer name, the employer's number, the operation type, etc. And over on the right side, we will place here notifications, perhaps like appointments that you have coming up, etc. We haven't populated that for this demo. We're not focusing there today. The other screen is the employer information, which gives you a wider view, a more comprehensive view of the information you have on record with the organization. And the idea here is that we allow you to edit any bits of this information to keep your information update as time advances, right? We're not focusing there either. Where I want to jump to is transactions. Over here, I'll click view transactions. And what you see is a grid of different transaction types. You might be asking, well, what is a transaction? And a transaction is a record. All of these here are different records which have corresponding dollar values. So we look at this as the employer's account. You see a balance on the right hand side here of 3587, and that comprises of different transaction types. You see statements here. Derek mentioned that before. We'll be concentrating on that in this demo, but their interest, for instance, if you submit a statement late or it's not paid, their fees, their payments, refunds, etc. All of these are transaction types that impact what the employer owes. And what I want to highlight here is that you can search, of course, throughout time. This list can get very long, but you can search for a transaction once you know the payment reference, because a reference is associated with every transaction. But you can also filter. So I could filter by statements and then view all statements, which is the default view. But I can now look at all closed statements, which are statements with nothing outstanding, it's all paid up. Or you can look at open statements, which are the ones that have an outstanding balance of 3092. You see this example here. All right, so that's a look at the transaction page. I think from this point you could view these transactions, etc. But where I really want to get to is for statements. And we have a separate link for that, which is called view statements. And it's a similar grid, similar functionality for searching and filtering. The difference here is it's already focused on statements, because that's a big deal for the employers as they interact with the Social Security boards or national insurance boards. And what I want to demonstrate at this point is how easy, how convenient, how quickly I can submit a statement, right? And I'll start here with adding a statement. We do this by periods. So right now, the last statement this employer has, First Choice Plumbing, is for January 23, and February is next. So that's what I'm going to add. I'm going to look for February 23, and we have this interface here for you to scroll for the different years. We have business rules here around how far back you could create a statement for, or how far in the future you can, but we're not focusing on that at the moment. I'll hit February and go next. Start timer. So we have the statement already created, and the quickest way for us to do this is to copy from the previous month. And I know in this new period for February 23, I want to add one new employee because we had one new hire, and make edits to two existing employees because they had raises in the period. So for that, I'm going to add employee, and I'm going to copy, I'm going to enter the SSN. So this is John's SSN, his first and last name. John earns a monthly salary of $6,000, and I have added the employee to the statement. The statement grid now refreshes, and John is in there. He's not at the top, but I can now search to verify that John Williams with a monthly salary of $6,000 is there. Brilliant. The other thing that we needed to do is adjust the salaries of two employees in this period. So I'm going to search for Sarah because she's on my list. Yes, Sarah, in week 4, you made some overtime. So you actually made $500 in week 4 and not $250. So I accept that change. The statement grid refreshes, and I'll also update Marie's. In week 1, she had some overtime. She made $750, and we accept that. At this point, we have made all updates to this period, and the only thing left to do is to submit. So I review this declaration, I click the button, and I submit the statement. And in a couple of minutes, we've successfully submitted a statement. I'm not sure if you were timing, but that's surely under 5 minutes, and that's very hard to beat. All right, so what I want to do now is take us to a different method of submitting a statement. So the same applies. We've submitted for February 2023, and you see here that the amount is there, the status is submitted. I could view that, and we can note now that nothing on the submitted statement is available to be edited. That's important to note. What we can do is all of the other features we can search, like I was showing before. You could drill in to see all of the other details on the statement. But what I want to do is continue the demonstration on how we upload. So I will submit a new one for create a new statement for March now. And the same applies. You hit new, create, and over in the actions tab, on the actions button, we've demonstrated copy before and copy previous month. If you hit copy, it simply allows you to select the specific month that you'd like to copy, right? And we have some rules around here because certain months have 5 weeks, other months have 4 weeks. So there's an explanation here around how we treat with those differing weeks in the periods. But what I want to show is the upload utility. So once you click here, you see this upload statement utility, and we have, you can imagine when you're running a business, you may have HR or payroll systems able to give you a standard output that indicates the number of employees as well as what they earned in that period. I'll give an example of these sample files that we accept. You can see on screen here the national insurance number or the SSN, the period, the week number, importantly, the salary that they earned, and the first and last name of those employees. This is an example of one of the files that we accept, and this is the one I'll be using for this demonstration today. So at this point, all the employee needs to do is to choose that file that they have already generated. I have it here on my screen. I click open, and on clicking upload, this is going to run this file through our validation service. It's going to check all of the IPs on there, ensure that they're valid. Derek spoke to ensuring that all the information we have in the system is correct. And I'm going to quickly demonstrate part of the ways that we ensure that we only accept valid information. So you see here, we have a total submitted records of 101, but we have some errors here. Only 96 of those were saved. We have errors with 5. And so the system allows you to download this error file. and examine, well, what went wrong? What happened between my upload file, the file I uploaded, and the system accepting it? So our validators went in there, and this file is going to open, detailing all of the errors that it found with your file. So I'll just click editing here, because what I want to do is demonstrate that upon inspecting the error. So this here says that Arthur, Adam, something was wrong with the name or the SSN. So hey, I realized that Adam is actually Adams. That's not his full name is actually Arthur Adams. And for Paula, invalid SSN, this number doesn't work out. So I know that there's a 1 missing here. All of these. And now that we've made our corrections, I will save this and upload this very file to the statement. So I'll choose file again and select the file that I just edited, that the system gave me in terms of errors, and I'll upload. And now we should see that 5 errors go down to 0. Good. So now we have 5 submitted records, which correlates to the 5 errors that we just had. And we know that we now have a complete statement. It's error-free. It's ready to go. Before I submit this, though, I want to take us through just a few more of the features that we have here. You would note that we only allow the employer to, all we request is that the employer states the employee by way of SSN or national insurance number, their name, and the salary that they earned in that period, whether weekly or monthly. Everything else, the system calculates for this. So you see all of these numbers. 1108, you would see for Richard. If I click down in here, all of these were calculated by the system using this schedule. And Derek spoke to this in his introduction. So every statement and every period is associated with a schedule, and we use this to calculate the contributions based on the salary. Yeah, so these figures here you see for a private sector person, they have it straight 10%, and if they're a pensioner, it's 1.2%. And you would see those figures represented on the statement as you scroll through and inspect the various types. Sorry.
Justin, it seems like there's an error, right? Like I'm noticing that there's no employee dollar values there.
That's because Barbara might be a pensioner.
Pensioner.
Yeah, Barbara's a pensioner. Great. So that's just a brief explanation about the schedules and how the system takes all of that work from the employers and ensures that we have accurate information going into the system. The other thing I want to highlight is that you might want to export this to Excel, and clicking this button will do that for you. It has a title there, statement for March 2023, and you can open that file and see the information represented on the statement itself. Here you see it along with the payment reference. Good. The other thing that you might be interested in doing for whatever reason is printing the statement details. And so I've just clicked this. It will open the browser dialog for the printing interface. And here you see all of the information represented in a different format acceptable for printing on paper. The header information is here. It's still in draft mode at the time you're printing it. And you have all the breakdown of the IPs and all of the weeks. If they were monthly, you would just see one row for monthly, etc. So that's our printing feature. And at this point, I think all that's left to do is submit it. Oh, before I do that, I will also highlight that for any of these records, once a statement is in a draft mode, which you see at the top here, you can continue to edit. So by clicking the pencil button there, I could inline edit any of these salary fields, and accepting that by clicking that will refresh the page and have the payment total change based on the schedules in place. Yeah, so at this point, all that's left to do is submit the statement. Of course, you have this declaration that you need to read and give consent to, and on submission, that's it. We've successfully submitted a statement for March 23. So that's the bulk of what we wanted to show here, but there's one last part, and I'll kick it over to Richard for that to treat with how the employer can now fulfill their duties toward these submitted statements. So Richard.
Thank you, Justin. So I'm Richard, and let me show you how easily an employer can make payments to their account. From either the view statement area or the view transactions area, an employer may view their statements, and Justin has shown this. He has also shown that you can look at all the open statements on the account. Open statements are those for which a payment is needed. Now, what you're seeing here would be 3 open periods. You're seeing January, you're seeing the interest for January, February, interest, and March. It's noteworthy to mention that we have implemented and we can configure rules around the payment. So for example, in this demonstration, we do not allow an employer to pay interest on its own. As you can see, there's no pay button for the interest lines. This can be configured as per your organization's rules. To pay a statement, the employer selects either the pay icon, or they can view the statement. They may just want to double check all the details, and they can select the pay statement button. Both options lead to this very screen. Now, we can pay via credit card or debit card, and we can pay via submitting a proof of payment. So I'd like to go through each of those options. For the credit card option, you are required to input your email address because we'll be using that email address to send you a receipt. So I'll put Mario's email address in. You are then required to put in your credit card information, your billing address. Let's go with our billing address. And simply complete the payment. So this payment will be confirmed on screen for the employer, and an email will be sent. Let's first look at the confirmation. It shows you the transaction number that comes from the payment processor and the amount that has been paid. If I were to check my email, I'll receive an email that has the contents of a receipt. Now, this is a digital receipt and shows the employer's name, their number, the period for which they're paying, and the amount. Here it is. So as you can see, we have the transaction receipt, the date, the employer that has been paid. We paid for January. That payment included both the amount of the statement as well as the fees. A reminder that we had that rule that we must include fees within the payment amount. Okay, at this point, let's return to the employer's account, and we can see that January statement is paid. So January here, previously there was a balance. Now that balance has been covered. If I would to select all the open transactions to be paid, January is no longer here. We only have February and March that are outstanding. I'll use the opportunity of February to look at notifying the Social Security Board that we've paid the bank. So this is the second option, the proof of payment. Similarly to what you've seen us do with the credit cards, we do want to collect the employer's email address because we will send them a notification that the payment has been sent for processing. Let's select the financial institution. And in this case, we're paying an amount now because we are only receiving proof of payment. We're not able to limit how much the employer pays. But in this case, the employer is to pay $3,007.87. We allow them to enter the amount that they would have paid at their bank and the transaction number that they would have received from their bank. So they would go on in a separate interface, they would do this. They would come back and submit this as a proof of their declaration, a proof of what they've paid. Part of that proof is to upload a receipt so we can check it against our bank records. Daily, the bank would deposit funds into the Social Security Board's bank account, and they would use this proof of payment together with the information that is submitted in this form to validate that the payment is received. So upon selecting upload proof of payment, we're sending all this information into the department or into the back office that's going to process these payments on behalf of the employer. We let the employer know, though, that payments received via this method will not be updated immediately in the portal because it does have to go through a verification process. That notification is sent here in this pop-up, but it is also sent via email. So here we have a second email that would have come in, and it highlights to the contributor that this amount was submitted for you for this period, February 2023, and to allow us a couple of business days to process it. If I go back to my open transactions, you're going to see that February is still open, and it will be closed when the department at the Social Security Board completes its processing. So here we can see simply submitting contributions, which Justin performed, and now you've seen us closing the loop where the employer has been able to simply pay their outstanding amounts. At this point, I'd like to hand back over to Derek for any questions or feedback.
Hey, Derek, you're muted.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Richard. So as you can see through the demos, we showed the elements of automation where you can upload documents and where the calculations were happening automatically, ease of submission, how that would help eliminate errors by doing the calculations for you. And I think we demonstrated that it's a user-friendly interface, easy to interact with. Justin showed how we could submit a statement in minutes. And with that, I would just like to turn it over to the floor and answer any questions that you may have. I know in the discussion in the chat there, I was answering some questions regarding logins. So if there's any more clarification that's required, I'll be happy to provide it.
We have
Oh,
one
yes.
question.
Yeah, the last, okay, go ahead.
Anthony, you could go ahead. Okay, that was probably an error.
Okay. There was a question, the last question in the chat was if you're giving access to a third party to access your employer profile and they no longer represent you, then certainly you would want to be diligent and remove the access. One of the things we could look at too is an automatic expiry or revalidation so that things wouldn't be left in perpetuity that way. But we'd be happy for any feedback around how you'd like that to work. So the solution's currently implemented in Belize, in Turks and Caicos. It's in the process of being implemented in St. Vincent and Antigua.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? Morning.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
In your presentation,
hello, this is Anthony.
Sorry, my name is this is Colin Scatliff, British Virgin Islands.
Yes.
And the contribution submission form, you showed up to 4 weeks of entry. Is it possible for the
Hello?
5th week entry?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It just happened at the month that was in that was using. That was a 4-week month.
Was a 4-week month. Okay, perfect. And also in the payment processing, Unfortunately, we don't do, for example, payment directly to the bank, but we do accept either cash or credit card payment in office. I'm sorry, I must apologize. I did came onto the
Yeah,
to the
so
webinar
we would
late,
accept
but
in-person payments through the cashiering module. So we have a point of sale for cashier that they would use to take payments. And that could be an employer payment. It could be a payment for in-branch services. Like let's say an IP comes in, wants a new card, they could make the pay. If you charge for the replacement, then they would pay that. And we have situations where some boards, they have other types of revenue as well, like they rent out property or they have loan programs for their employees, and the employees or ex-employees would come in and make their loan payments. So we can also facilitate those types of receipts.
Okay, so the employer can submit their forms online, and then when they get to the office, they pay the correct amount.
And the cashier would see all of that data. So the cashier can open up the employer's account and see what statements are outstanding or interest or whatever, and take the payment in person.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody else was trying to ask a question there at the beginning. It was Andrew, or I'm not sure.
Anthony, you could go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is Anthony. I was speaking just now, but I realized I was on mute. The payment page. I noticed the way it's organized is that the payer, the employer, would make the payment using, I suppose, their online system, and then they would upload or submit proof of payment that will allow the reconciliation in the back end. Is that a correct understanding of what you presented?
Well, there were two methods presented, right? So we have okay, so there's some challenges we have.
Not the card part. I'm not querying the card part.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah. So the card part you saw uses First Atlantic. Now for the proof of payment, we have scenarios where in many cases, we allow employers to go pay at the bank. And then now what we have is a bank payment that we then have to connect back to the employer's account and what statements they paid. Now, in some cases...
well, I haven't asked my question yet.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question I'm asking is that the way it's organized is that the employer makes the payment at the online system, and then they would submit a proof of payment or receipt to allow the back office authorization. What I was asking or trying to get at is that would your solution, or can your solution in fact facilitate ACH debits? So in other words, when the person or when the employer is making the payment, the payment service provider, whoever it is, will be able to initiate a debit to the employer's account, because the employer's account may be at another bank, whatever bank. The payment service provider may be affiliated with, say, Bank A, and the employer may be affiliated with, say, Bank B. And what you want to be able to do is to initiate a debit to Bank B over the ACH system, and then of course pay to the national insurance or the social.
You mean you're asking if like you could debit or withdraw directly out of the employer's account?
Yeah. The payment service providers could normally arrange that.
It can be done. It just depends on the API and the interface the bank makes available.
Yes. The benefit of that, of course, is that you don't get any very, very low reconciliation issues, and it wouldn't be
absolutely. If something like that is available, I know it's not available in all jurisdictions. And in some, we don't even have, it's difficult to even do online payments on the portal. So, but absolutely, if there's a facility to do any type of payments like that, whether it's debit, in other words, direct like withdrawal, or employer initiated, we can accommodate that in the system. That proof of payment is really a workaround to deal with a manual payment process where the employer goes to the bank, makes the payment. And what we've seen in some places is they have difficulties reconciling the payments they receive from the banks and what employer accounts and statements they're supposed to be applied to. So it provides a workaround for that by allowing the employer to go directly on the portal and submit the proof of payment. It's not ideal, but in a scenario where we're...
that civil unrest.
So it's not ideal, but in a scenario where we're forced to take manual payments at the bank and we can't do online payments, then it's important.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So once the API and that is set up, you should be able to handle it.
Yeah, the limitations are not like we can integrate and communicate with virtually anything. The issue is really just, what does your bank make available to you in terms of services?
Right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay,
It's a
thanks,
good
Anthony.
question.
We have two questions in the chat, Derek. First one, which countries do you have the solution implemented?
Okay, I did answer that one earlier. It was is Belize, Turks and Caicos. It's in process of being implemented in St. Vincent. They are actually live with the registration portion of the solution currently, and also in process in Antigua.
Okay,
With
great.
more to
And
come.
secondly, one from Karen. Supporting document management, how is archiving handled to manage storage?
Okay, so the document repository can store a lot of data. Again, we're into the terabytes here. So we haven't really seen a need in the scope that we're dealing with in the Caribbean here to take things out of there and archive them further. Like the SharePoint repository there's no need to necessarily archive stuff out of there. You could be using that for decades. But if you wanted to, we could do that as well. You could move it into, for example, an Azure container, which is but no matter where you put those documents, even in an archive, you're going to have to pay for that storage, right? So the SharePoint cost of storage is pretty low. You could probably get it a little lower by using something like an Azure container, but you're talking, and you're not talking big dollars here. So what I would say, I guess, to simplify it, there's no real need to archive it. The SharePoint repository is scalable and it's fairly cost effective. But if you wanted to, there are methods to migrate that data out of the SharePoint and put it somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing Karen has another message.
Yeah, large data could affect performance. Certainly in any environment, eventually large data can affect performance. But as I mentioned during the demo, this platform it's enterprise grade. There are banks, there are government agencies in the world that use this with thousands of users. And most social security boards, even the largest ones in the Caribbean, you may have a few hundred employees. It's not insignificant. The biggest part of the data is the contributions, right? And currently we manage all the contributions for the entire history, for example, of Belize in the Dataverse with there's no visible impact to performance. So. Yeah. So searching could be, and again, just searching could be impacted if you're going through a lot of data. If you know what you're looking for and you're putting in something and say, show me the data from this month 5 years ago, it's instantaneous, right?
Thanks. And I'm seeing Daniel Thomas, your hand is raised. Do you have a question for us?
Yeah, and maybe just another point too with the documents. We've got repositories with literally millions of SharePoint documents in it, and you could do a search for example, an employer name or a social security number in there, and it will return that virtually instantly.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, morning.
Yeah, Daniel Thomas from NIS Guyana. I just have two questions I want to ask. The first one relative to the contribution schedules, but we call it contribution schedule, and I think you had the statement. What we have here in Guyana are employers submitting multiple schedules for a period because of the structure of the organization. So what you may find is that you may have a junior level payroll, then you may have a senior payroll, and then you may have a payroll where you have those persons at the lower end of the spectrum. So an employer could make payments on 3 schedules for a month. I just want to know if there is a line, if that was thought through, because you might find that would be needed for some employers.
We do support that. So, for
You do
example,
support-
we would allow an employer to submit more than one statement for a period. What we do verify is that they're not submitting for the same person and week on multiple statements. So if you're an employer, and let's say you have these large divisions, let's say you have 3 divisions and you submit each division separately, you could do that. But what we wouldn't, if we saw the same employee in all 3 statements, we would reject it. Now I mean, if it had to be different for me, we can adjust that, but you have to consider, what that could lead to, right? So you probably want to have some controls around that. But the way it works right now is, yes, you can submit multiple statements, but we check for duplicates. So we don't allow you to put the same IP. I could be Derek on one statement, work week 1 and 2, and I could work on a different statement week 3 and 4. But I couldn't submit 2 statements where I'm working in week 2 for the same company, the same employer. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does to some extent. So I could leave that like that for now. Another question I want to ask is relative to the application and its functionality. In with a country like Ghana, where businesses are spread geographically far and wide, and the issue of connectivity sometimes poses a challenge because of the type of sectors we have in Guyana. So you have mining, you have forestry, and depending on where you might be, you might monitoring some remote location where internet connectivity is not ideal. So as such, those employers would still be required by law to submit statements every month and these kind of things. But what I want to know is, could the application cater for the production of the schedule, and when the person gets, let's say they had to submit at a particular time, but because connectivity was down, it will allow them to, whenever connectivity is restored, submit this the schedule without an issue. Maybe hold it somewhere.
You mean like have an offline mode?
On offline mode, right? Yes.
Yeah. Currently we don't have that, but we have done something similar for actually NIB Trinidad. We did provide like some functionality that takes all of their forms and it does store it in offline. So you could submit, like, for example, a claim form and it'll store it, and then when you can submit it later. So it's doable. The way it works currently, that's not the case, but stuff like that we could look at that.
Great, no problem, because in the Guyana scenario, that would be ideal because of our geographical spread and the type of infrastructure that we have in place currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or another alternative, as we were discussing, like if they could use the Excel sheet, right? That's a sort of workaround. They could actually use the Excel upload to key in their statement, and then when they have available connectivity, just upload it.
All right, thanks, Daniel, for your question. We have one more from Kevin. Kevin, feel free to ask.
Yes. Do you allow for adjustments after the contributions are submitted?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, I have like 2 or 3 questions in one. Sorry.
All right, no problem. Go ahead.
That's one. So that is, in other words, somebody submitted the wrong number of weeks or the wrong amount. And the other question is, do you allow for submissions by multiple employers for the same person? So in other words, Kevin knows work for different employers and they're submitting contributions for the same month. And the last question, I hope you're tracking, then the last question, and you probably already answered it, is this totally cloud-based or there's an element that is on-prem?
So I'll answer your last question first because it's the easiest one. It is cloud-based. We're a Microsoft partner. Microsoft is a cloud-based organization, so it really is a cloud-based solution. So let's go to your first question, which one? And I'm trying to remember now. Sorry, I lost track. But the first question, can you repeat it just briefly?
Yeah, the first question is, do you allow for adjustments after?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the adjustments. So yes, we have and the ability for an employer to go in and make an adjustment to a previously submitted statement. If they do that, now, I mean, this differs from one agency to the other. Like in Belize, they only allow that adjustment to occur within a fairly short period of time after the statement is submitted. But if you wanted it to be longer, it could be. So the way it works is the employer goes in and effectively what they're doing is resubmitting a statement for specific individuals. And when they do that, it effectively replaces what was originally provided. So it's not an adjustment in terms of plus or minus. And the reason we did it that way is because that makes it complicated, right? So the easy way for the employer to adjust the prior period is just say, these 3 employees were wrong. I'm going to submit an adjustment statement for Derek and Richard and Justin with the corrected salaries, right? And then it calculates the contributions for them. And what that effectively does is it replaces the original contributions for those individuals. Then you can get into how you deal with that, because there could be an overage, or that could be more than what was done previous or less, so that could result in refunds, and it depends on how you treat with those. But that's a fairly complex, but we do support it.
Hello?
Yes.
Just confirming, 11 to 3 Monday.
Yes, okay.
Everyone is available for 11 to
Okay.
3 on Monday.
Okay.
Perhaps somebody can mute that. Okay,
Hello.
so the next question was, do we support multiple employers submitting for the same IP? And absolutely we do, because there's no way to, people legitimately have more than one job, right? So if I'm working at 3 different places, each of those employers is going to submit a statement with my record on it. What we do need to do is, when we're considering those contributions for benefit purposes, is we need to treat that as one contribution. So there's an aggregation that needs to occur to determine what my salary was for the applicable weeks where I was working at multiple places, and then that factors into the average weekly insurable earnings calculation that's typically used to pay out a benefit.
Yeah, I have 2 more, but I think I asked too many already.
That's okay. Probably everybody's benefiting from your questions. So
yeah, one of the things, employers sometimes fall in arrears. I see you have the ability to utilize the previous month to make the submission. Do you have the facility to select any previous month?
yes.
Any previous month, which is good.
Yes.
Because you have some construction companies or companies that have seasonal workers, and that last month may not be the best month.
Correct. Yeah,
And
so we do let you pick a different month.
And finally, there are self-employed persons. In our country, we allow them to pay up to 1 year in advance. Sometimes they come in and they pay 12 months. Do you allow for maybe a range of months to be submitted at once?
Yes. Well, at once, not necessarily right now. That's something we could look at maybe, but we do allow an employer to submit because we've had this request from another organization. So they wanted the same thing. They wanted employers to submit a year of statements in advance and pay them up front. So we do allow that.
Thank you.
And that would be parameterized. So if you like don't allow that, then we just turn that off. So we don't allow people to submit statements into the future.
Right. Do we have any more questions? No. Okay. Well, that is a wrap, folks. Derek, Richard, and Justin, thank you so much for this presentation today. And thank you to our audience for joining us. We hope that you found this webinar informative and has given you a better understanding of Davyn's social security platform and its benefits. But before we close, we've made it really easy for you guys to share any thoughts, questions, or comments with us. So just click the link we've just placed in the meeting chat to access our webinar feedback form. If you'd like some more information on acquiring Davyn's social security platform or any other product, just fill in your details and someone from our team will reach out to you. So again, thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. We look forward to hosting you in the future. As mentioned before, this event has been recorded and we'll be sure to send to everyone in the upcoming days. So have a great week and a great weekend. Enjoy your holiday on Saturday and everybody take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.